Good afternoon, Earth. This is Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, New Mexico, working on oil painting Conscientious Emergence. Alright, gonna continue with some detail work today. This one's pretty much, I was thinking of putting a giant squid in here, but I don't know. The more I stare at it, the more I'm liking the elements that are in place. I may just detail what's there and think about the squid. But for now, I'm going to work on some detail around the sun. I'm going to lay in some white and a circle at the perimeter of the yellow glow, and then emanate sort of watery shapes throughout the blue. Okay, so here we go.
Often, I was in, I'll show you some. This bracelet that I'm wearing, I never thought I'd ever wear a bracelet. It was given to me 2 months ago up in Heidelberg, where I gave a workshop, a trauma workshop, for the Haida people. A 75-year-old woman came up in tears towards the end of the workshop, wanted to work with me. She told me that she'd forgotten her Haida language. She used to speak it fluently until she was 5 years old, and she forgot it. I said, that must have scared you. She said, first day I went to school, I spoke my tribal language. They took a stick and they beat me. I know other indigenous people who, when they spoke their language in the residential schools, this is when I was a teenager. I had no idea this was going on in this country. Kids would speak their own language in the school, they'd have a pin stuck in their tongue. Here in British Columbia. And then we wander.
Crazy wind right
high
now.
rates of diabetes and autoimmune disease.
Sure, my hummingbird
and
fear didn't
suicide.
get killed. I don't think they've shown up yet, but I got the feeder up just in case.
And what is it? Now this woman with the pin in her tongue, she was an alcoholic by the time she was 9 years old. Let me finish with 3 minutes on addiction, then I'll take questions. I'll define addiction as any behavior in which you find temporary relief or pleasure, and therefore you crave it, but then it causes negative consequences, and you can't give it up despite the negative consequences. So pleasure, craving, relief in the short term, harm in the long term, inability to give it up. I said any behavior, I didn't say drugs. Could include drugs, for sure. Alcohol, cocaine, crystal meth, cigarettes, caffeine, fentanyl. Could also be work, as I've said, gambling, shopping, pornography, eating, bulimia, extreme sports, cell phones, internet games. According to that definition, let me ask you, how many of you would acknowledge that at some time or another in your life, you had some kind of an addiction? Just raise your hands. Again, most people. Now, if I asked you, I'm not going to right now, just for sake of time, not what was wrong with the addiction, but what was right about it. You know what you tell me, what people tell me all over the world? Stress relief. It numbed me out. Temporary escape. A sense of control. A sense of belonging. I felt more alive. Well, all these things, pain relief, numbing out. When do you have to be numbed out? When you go to the dentist. When it's going to hurt. That's why you have to numb out. How come on God's green earth, with everything that's available to us, you didn't feel alive? Something happened. You got disconnected from yourself. These are all forms of emotional pain, and my mantra is, don't ask why the addiction, ask why the pain. And if you want to understand why people are in pain, don't look at their genes or their brains, for God's sakes, look at their lives. In the downtown east side work for 12 years, there wasn't a single female patient who had not been sexually abused as a child. And these are not just my findings, these are statistics from all over the place. So, where am I coming to? It's all one, you see. Our minds and bodies are one. And they're one with the society that we live in, and their relationship relationships that we have, and how we treat each other, and how we think about ourselves as human beings, how we like ourselves and don't like ourselves, how much trust we have in the world or how much fear we have in the world, how much pain we carry. These are all determined by what happens to us in this life. We don't have to stay unconscious puppets. Some of you might remember the story of Pinocchio. Some of you, how many do Pinocchio? Oh good, yeah, well, wonderful children's story. And Pinocchio is a puppet, of course, who wants to become a real boy. And until he becomes a real boy, he does some pretty stupid things. And when he becomes a real boy, he looks at his puppet self and he says, I was so foolish when I was a puppet. Well, we're all foolish when we're puppets. We're all foolish when we're pulled by the unconscious, which is programmed by our early childhood experience beginning in the womb. The point is we can get liberated from that. We can heal. Trauma fundamentally is a disconnection from the self. We can recover. What does it include from addiction? What does the word recovery mean? What does it mean to recover something? It means to find it. When you ask people, what did you find when you recovered? They say, I found myself. Which takes me back to the first thing I said to you about the regret of dying people, the regret that they weren't themselves. The word stress was coined here in Canada by another Hungarian. I hate to tell you, but we're just geniuses, okay? This is Dr. Hans Janos Cellier. He was a very famous physician and researcher, not as well remembered as he should be, but he's the one that did the work on stress in the laboratory in the 1920s in Montreal. And he's the one that coined the word stress, the way we use it today. He's the one that made the word stress, brought it into the popular language. And he said that most of our tensions and frustrations stem from compulsive needs to act the role of someone we are not. So this thing of trying to fit in with what other people expect from you, trying to please other people, pushing down your own emotions, disconnecting from yourself. We were programmed into it in childhood, we were programmed into it in childhood, and we live in a society that keeps demanding it. And I'm telling you, the way to health is to recover that self, to reconnect to it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks. Now, we have time for some questions, so there are people with mics. I think they'll come around to you if you raise your hand if you have a question.
Yes, so Dr. Mate, there's some folks that are going to wander through the crowds. I think we have about 30 minutes.
Would you
like to have some water?
You have 30 minutes, you said?
Yeah, we have 30 minutes.
Okay, 30 minutes for questions.
Yeah,
Good.
30 minutes of questions. Rapid fire.
That's fine, yeah.
You ready for it?
Yeah.
So the more concise everyone is, the more questions Dr. Mate can answer. Deal? So you'll see some folks wandering through the bottom section here. Sorry balcony. Down here we've got some folks with microphones. Raise your hands and stay at your seat. And some of our lovely volunteers will be by with a microphone for questions for Dr. Mate. I see one back here.
You just wave your hand. Yeah. Okay.
Hi, Dr. Mate.
Hi.
So my question is, what can you speak to when a lot of recovery programs are fully abstinence-based? What can you say to including psychedelic-assisted therapy in someone's recovery plan? What are the kinds of things an individual should consider before looking into that? Should it be on the table? What kind of risk is involved there?
Did you say psychedelic assisted therapy? Yeah. Well, look, there's a much broader question. which is embedded in your question. Most addiction treatment facilities don't deal with trauma. They don't deal with causes, they deal with effects. So they're trying to change the behavior, but the behavior is only a symptom. Symptom of what? Emotional pain, based on early experience, and desperation. Until you deal with that, you're just dealing with the surface. So addiction programs need to finally get the message that it's about trauma. It's about people being wounded. And I'm telling you, I don't go anywhere in the world, literally. I'm fortunate to have lived long enough to see this. I don't go anywhere in the world. We've got people in the streets coming up to me thanking me because I helped them to understand that their addiction wasn't a fault, a moral failure, or character weakness. It was a response to trauma, and they can heal that. It happened here already in Kelowna. So, and I also know that many programs have taken on a trauma-based view, not sufficiently. Again, as I said, the average medical doctor doesn't get a single lecture on trauma. It's unbelievable. So, it's a much larger issue than just psychedelics. Now, to answer specifically about psychedelics, they can be helpful. They're not magic pills. To the extent that they help, it's not because they change your brain. It's not like you're taking a drug to change your brain. It's not like taking Prozac for depression, which changes the chemistry of your brain. Psychedelics don't do that. They only last in the system for a few hours. What they do is they give you a glimpse of your unconscious. All the pain, the fear that you've been running away from. And that might even help you recall where you developed that pain and that fear. But they help you do it with the consciousness of an adult. So you get a glimpse of your childhood emotional states, but as a conscious adult. Now this depends on really good help being available. So I believe they do have an important role to play, potentially. They're not for everybody. Some people shouldn't take them at all. But well chosen, in a safe environment with well-trained facilitators, I've seen them do wonderful things for people with addictions. In the context of a much longer recovery and healing program, not as a standalone thing. Okay.
Hello, Dr. Mate.
Yeah, so can you just show me where you are?
Oh, I'm right here.
Okay, hi.
Hello, it's
Hi.
a pleasure. I guess this hits really close to home. I used to work at the Youth Recovery House in Kelowna.
Yeah.
And our youth really resonated with your work. We held a lot of workshops on trauma and therapy, and they loved your chapters, they loved your TED Talks, and so first of all, I just wanted to say that there's so much happening behind closed doors that you might not be seeing, and people enjoying your work. So I just
I'm
want to
always
say
so glad to hear that.
thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
The second thing I wanted to really ask you about is, we talk about people and their mental health and addiction, and I moved on from that job. I'm now doing my master's and PhD in clinical psychology, and there's so many mental health professionals out there that have all this training and that know some of what you're talking about. And you're talking about also physicians having their set of training and how it's different. And we can look to other countries like New Zealand, and they have integrated care, so they have primary health care providers with mental health professionals alongside. And yet BC doesn't have that. And I look at the statistics, and I look around the room, and I see all these people responding to your wonderful questions, and so much of us have dealt with mental health in our families, in our communities, and addiction. Over 50% of people that go to their primary care providers, such as a physician or a nurse practitioner in BC, had an underlying mental health issue. And that's huge. And just as you've alluded to...
Okay, well, I'll ask you to come to your question, okay?
Yeah, just as you've alluded to, you didn't get that training in medical school, and so my question to you is, what do you think about integrating mental health professionals into primary healthcare centers, and why is BC lacking behind, whereas other countries acknowledge your teachings and are building upon that?
Well, first of all, I don't have to really elaborate on your statement, because I absolutely agree with it. You know, the need for integration and interprofessional collaboration and a multifaceted approach, absolutely. Look, I don't know why BC, or Canada in general, or the United States in general, or England in general. You know, a lot of countries are lacking that kind of integration. Again, I said that the Western mind splits things into part, things that can't be separated. We live in a Western mindset, really a colonial mindset. You know, and that's just, now, I can tell you that for all the invitations I get to speak around the world, I never get one from my home university, UBC. I'm not taking it personally, but you know, actually this year I did. I did give a talk for the Alumni Association a couple of weeks ago. I've been asked to give grand rounds at Children's Hospital in a couple of weeks. BCNJ, BC asked me to write an article on trauma. Well, that's amazing. I've only been yelling about it for the last quarter century. But you know, so I'm saying there's slight shifts, but there's tremendous institutional inertia. There's tremendous institutional inertia. And generally, the people that make it into governing or decisive positions in institutions are the ones least likely to look at this stuff. That's just how it works. How to shift it, just keep plugging away.
Question from the back here.
Yeah?
Hello?
Yeah, hi? Yeah, wherever?
I am on the other side.
On the other side, okay, yeah, hi.
Hi, Doctor.
Hi.
I wanted to ask a question regarding kind of how we contextualize this within world events. I think we're all seeing a lot of traumatizing content from parts of the world that are going through very difficult circumstances.
Yeah.
The ones I'm thinking about as a Palestinian are Gaza and Palestine specifically.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing is a lot of mental health practitioners champion this idea that the best way for us collectively to move through this is to look away and guard our own selves and our discomfort.
Yeah.
What do you think about that in terms of a way of taking care of ourselves, but also a way, or like what responsibilities do we still have towards other people while shielding ourselves from things like that?
Okay. Well, look, that's everybody's individual call. If your simple goal is to shield yourself, protect yourself, don't look at it, don't engage with what's going on. But I'm telling you, as a Jew, I grew up with this. When I was 11 years old, so I really found out about the Holocaust. For years, my head was spinning every day with the question, how could this have happened? How could the world could have let this happen? I'm seeing now how the world can let it happen. Parents are picking their kids' bones out of the rubble, and the world is ignoring it, and letting it happen. And our politicians are even cheering it on. It sickens me. So we can have a decision about it. Should we just look after ourselves? I don't blame anybody who comes to that decision. That is too painful, it's too harrowing, it's just too terrible to pay attention to. I can understand that. But are you going to be a complete human being if you do that? And what does it mean to be a complete human being? So I decided, for myself at least, that no, I'm not going to look away, and I'm not going to stay silent. And I totally understand the trauma of my own people. I totally understand the trauma of my own people that potentiated this situation. We took our trauma from Europe and we imposed it on the Palestinians, is what we did, in an effort to save ourselves. So as one traumatized people, has been traumatizing on other people now for the last 80 years, as you know. That's how I see it. And so trauma has a lot to do with what's going on. I'm not excusing anybody. I'm not excusing Jews acting out of trauma to traumatize somebody else, to save themselves, which is what they did. I'm not excusing what happened on October the 7th as a response to the trauma that no, these acts are all inexcusable. But we have to understand the context. And just to answer your personal question, it's a choice for all of us. It's a choice for all of us. And when Justin Trudeau said that
All right.
we both were established on indigenous land by suppressing the indigenous population. And we have to come to terms with that. It's not a question of Canada folding up our tents and going back to Europe or Asia, wherever we came from. We're not going to do that.
All right, so you can see it starting to kind of glow and ripple in these puzzle piece kind of watery patterns emanating from the sun. I'm deciding to go ahead and do that with the moon as well, across the mountain range, or at least the most distant mountain range, and light up the ones in the foreground.
I mean, as a culture. Are we happy with the fact that indigenous people die 20 years younger than the rest of us? That 50% of the women in jail are we happy with that? Is that okay? Are there some reasons for that maybe we could understand and look at and rectify? Is it okay that indigenous nations don't have potable water in 21st century Canada? Is that okay? And I'm saying the same thing needs to apply in the Middle East. Not to undo history, but to look it in the face. And again, each of us individually has to decide, yes, we want our safety, we want our comfort, we have to look after ourselves, and sometimes we do have to disengage. But overall, what will make us a complete human being, that when we look back on our lives, we'll be happy with? For my own part, it's not disassociating from reality. Okay?
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm over here.
Hi.
It's really nice to meet you. I've been a big fan for a really long time. My name's Stephanie. I'm a third-year biochemistry student at UBC here, and I want to be a physician largely because of your work. And to preface my question, I just wanted to say that you are inspiring a generation of physicians who will not be silent.
I'm so glad to hear that. Just don't argue with your teachers very much.
Oh no, don't worry, I do that plenty. But
Okay.
my honors thesis is I'm designing a project about how we can link trauma and addiction education to biochemistry and present that to biochemistry students. And I'm going to teach it as a module for one of our classes.
Okay.
So that'll happen in the next few years, so that's exciting. But
Yeah.
my question was, what advice do you have for future physicians, particularly because I know it is a very taxing role, and I do identify with a lot of what you're saying about, being a workaholic and the need to be wanted.
Yeah. So look, there's been a study on medical. I cite this in this book. There's something called. Do you know what telomeres are?
Yes.
Okay. So telomeres, for those that don't know, are chromosomal or DNA structures at the end of our chromosomes. They're made up of DNA, but they're like, see the shoelaces, there's a glue at the end to keep the threads from unraveling. So telomeres are at the end of our chromosomes to keep them from unraveling. And we're born with a certain number of units of them, maybe 10,000, and by the time we die there's 4,000. So they fray, they erode with age and with stress. They looked at medical students, medical residents, and they found that over a year, their telomeres shortened more than other people their age. In other words, they got older faster. So you gotta look after yourself. And unfortunately, well, it's changing, I think, in a positive sense, but physicians, anybody going to the health professions, psychologists, nurses, they should be guided to work on their own emotional stuff. Because the more you do, the more present and understanding you be with your clients, but also the better able you be to take care of yourself. So I say to you, take care of yourself. Do what you can. Number one, doing the emotional work as well. Number one. Number two, you're going to have to jump through a bunch of hoops to get your degree. You might as well accept that. That's how it is, you know. And when you do, you'll find your own path. That's what I can tell you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello?
Hi?
Oh, no, sorry, other side. No, sorry. Hi. I'm in
Okay, yeah, okay, hi.
My question's a little bit different than
I'm
everybody
sorry,
else's.
people are waving their hands. Stand up, would you? We're asking the question.
Yes, I am standing up.
Over to
You are
your left,
standing.
Dr. Mate. Over here. Over in the orange.
Okay, yeah, okay, go ahead.
Right up here.
Thank you.
I'm dealing with a high conflict.
Let me go to the mic here. That's it. Okay, start again, yeah?
I'm dealing with a high conflict parent who suffers from schizophrenia.
Yeah.
We have a young child.
A parent,
and
a parent, a parent?
A parent, yes, my ex. And I'm just wondering, for what she has already experienced in her young life, is it healthy to continue, yes, it's her father, but because of the volatile issues and schizophrenia that he does suffer from, what are things I need to be looking out for her development-wise?
I said, I need to make sure I get it. Are you saying that your father's child, your child's father is schizophrenic?
Yeah.
Are you still together?
No, but he's still
You're not,
in
okay.
her life.
So the question is how to protect your child?
Yeah, like obviously that's her dad, I want them to have a relationship, but it's definitely not healthy.
Yeah.
And things to look out for her.
How old is your child?
She's 2.
2.
Yeah.
Does she spend time with the dad?
Yes.
In your presence or unknown?
In my house, yes.
Okay. Is that because you want that to happen, or he wants it to happen, or who's making?
It's both.
You both want that?
Yeah, they need to be supervised visits, so like he can't be alone with
Okay.
her.
Well, look, the child needs to feel absolute security, and you can provide that. No, look, let me tell you something. You might not be cheered up by this, but your husband's or your child's father's schizophrenia, psychosis is rooted in trauma.
Yeah.
Okay? Number one. Number two, we always marry somebody at the same level of trauma that we're at. So you wouldn't have been with this man had you not been traumatized yourself. Are you with me?
I guess.
Okay. So the best thing you can do for your child is to work on your own stuff.
Yes, that is.
So that you can, because the more you do, the more present you'll be able to be for her, and more protective you'll be of any negative influences that might enter from any other source. So the most important thing you can do is, I really suggest you read a couple of my books, the Hold On To You Kids, it's the parenting book, and perhaps The Myth of Normal as well. Look after yourself, do your own healing, and absolutely provide that attachment relationship for the child where they feel safe and they can express their emotions. And tune into her. And if after a while you find that these visits are more upsetting for her than calming, you might want to reconsider the situation. Ideally, you'll be able to have the father in the child's life, schizophrenia or not. But you need to be vigilant, number one. Not suspicious, but vigilant. And provide that safe environment coming from your own self-awareness that your child needs. And then she'll be well protected. Okay? All right, thank you. Oh.
Dr. Mate, I think we have time We have time for 2 more questions.
All
And I do
right,
see that there's a mic
so
here at the back on the right.
that gets that started and gets this moving again. It's been sitting for a couple of minutes, drying and
So we'll just
thinking.
take those last 2 questions and then we'll
So
wrap
that's
up.
it for the moment. Thanks for watching. That's Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion House, New Mexico, working on oil painting, conscientious emergence. Have a good night, everybody.